So, you got stuff to talk.
I got stuff to talk. You're going to keep chowing down.
Keep nibbling on Jesus, because as long as there's
you're not going to want to have dinner.
Jesus tastes good.
We're going to dinner later, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
We're going to dinner at Threadgill's. I'm talking with my mouth full.
Okay, after the show, we're going to Threadgill's. We'll be there about 5:30.
That was a rib. I love ribs.
People in the audience are welcome to come down and join us. If you're wanting to come down and chat and have a nice dinner with us and have a friendly conversation, you're more than welcome to come down. We invite atheists and atheist-friendly people, so feel free. We're going to be at Threadgill's. Yeah.
Did I mention? I'm forgetful today, but of course the big #1 rule with this Eucharist Challenge thing is don't disrupt anybody's service, which means don't go screaming "I'm stealing Jesus," and run out of their church. But you can film as much of it as you can. I don't imagine it'd be very easy to actually film going into a Catholic church, and we are in no way responsible for any trouble you get into. So this is basically kind of a have fun with it, man.
Okay.
Anyway.
All right. Parts is parts. Okay. Well, today I want to talk about. It's a funny thing. There were two recent state Supreme Court decisions that had something I think very meaningful to say about religious liberty, religious freedom. And I thought maybe I can, hit both of these in one show. And it got to be that, no, they're not going to both fit in one show. So what I'm going to do is I'll do two shows back to back, or two. Next time I'm on, I'll hit the second Supreme Court decision. So the first decision was the May 15th California Supreme Court decision allowing same-sex marriage. Right, that was one pretty big decision. It's a historic decision, I think, that allows states to do that. And people had this to say about it. One person wrote, "Gay rights is just another tool in the effort not only to destroy religious freedoms, but to destroy Americanism and this nation." So you see histrionic sentiments like that. The other decision, which I want to talk about mostly today, I'll talk about the California ruling next time I'm on. This one I want to talk about the Texas Supreme Court decision. This is a June 27th decision, so it's pretty recent. That might be known as the demon influence suit. The state ruled on behalf of a church that had held a 17-year-old girl captive and did an exorcism on her twice, and she had sued for damages, but the Texas State Supreme Court threw it out on First Amendment grounds. So that's the very, very short version of it. I'll be going into a longer version of it, but both of these Supreme Court decisions have a lot to say about religious liberty, religious freedoms. The Texas Supreme Court is expanding them, and many people think that the California Supreme Court decision is contracting them. So I wanted to compare those and look at what these religious freedoms really mean and what these decisions mean. So the Texas Supreme Court case is number 05-0916. If people want to look it up online, I'm going to be quoting it from it today. I recommend looking at it. It's not terribly long. It's a little complicated. But the state Supreme Court ruled in a 6-3 decision that they would not interfere with church activities based on the free exercise clause of the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, even if that free exercise clause causes harm to adherents, meaning people who are part of the faith. So here's the story. Here's what happened. This case concerns a 17-year-old girl by the name of Laura Schubert. She was 17 at the time. This case was from 1996, so it's pretty old at this point. It's actually gone through three court rulings, and the Supreme Court was the third ruling on this case. So this Laura, who was then 17, participated in a garage sale preparation with church members at her church, and everybody in this group was tired and suggestible and apparently hungry, and some sort of mania swept over them, and they became convinced that there was demon activity in the church, and they went and oiled up all of the church things with oil, for anointing oil and all this stuff, and ran around and did all this. And the next day, apparently, at the Sunday service, Laura was acting strangely. And they decided that she was possessed. This church apparently believes in demon activity and demon possession and God possession and all this stuff. So they don't really have any grounding in reality. They think that demons are coming and going in and out of them all the time. So any strange behavior is obviously related to demons. So they grabbed her and held her down for over an hour. They laid hands on her, and she struggled and begged and begged to be set free. And a few days later, a similar event happened. Now I'm going to read from the case here where they sum this up. So this later that afternoon, which is that Sunday, Laura returned to a church for another youth activity and the Sunday evening worship service. During the evening service, Laura collapsed. After her collapse, several church members took Laura to a classroom where they laid hands on her and prayed. According to Laura, church members forcibly held her arms crossed over her chest despite her demands to be freed. According to those present, Laura clenched her fists, gritted her teeth, foamed at the mouth, made guttural noises, yelled, cried, kicked, sweated, and hallucinated. These parties sharply dispute whether these actions were the cause or the result of her physical restraint. It goes on to say that church members moreover disagreed about whether Laura's actions were a ploy for attention or whether the result of spiritual activity. So those aren't the only two options, by the way. Laura stated during the episode that Satan or demons were trying to get at her. After the episode, Laura, who allegedly began telling other church members about a vision, yet her collapse and subsequent reaction to being restrained may also have been the result of fatigue and hypoglycemia. Laura had not eaten anything substantive during that day and missed sleep because of the spiritual activities of that weekend. So whatever the cause, Laura was eventually released after she calmed down and complied with the request to say the name Jesus. So that was like a code word, I guess, where they
That's her safe word.
Safe word of some sort, where if the people believed that if she could say Jesus, then she wasn't possessed.
I brought some anointing oil.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Okay. What do you? Let's have a look at that.
This is. I don't want to give the name of the brand or the company or anything, but they sell this in stores for $3 for a quarter ounce.
Okay.
That's a 300% markup over what you can get it at the grocery store. Imagine how much cheaper it is if you buy it in bulk, because all it is hand-pressed olive oil.
Okay.
That's it. That's the only ingredient. However, it comes with this nifty little booklet.
The value-added part of it.
That says, prayer of faith for administering the sick. So this is for blessing and for healing. I would imagine you could probably use it for exorcism since it's just as phony as the rest of the crap. But it says, anoint anyone or anything at any time for whatever Christian purpose with the finest oils and balms on the planet Earth, guaranteed. Now, are they guaranteeing that these are the finest oils? Or are they guaranteeing that you can anoint anyone? Because if they're guaranteed, what about people who are allergic to olive oil? I guess you can still anoint them. You'd just be screwing them over.
Right.
Sending them to the hospital.
And some people are greasy enough they don't need it.
There's instructions. There's instructions in there on how to consecrate the oil.
Okay.
Because it doesn't come pre-consecrated. I'm going to go ahead and consecrate a few vials and see if I can sell them for more than the $3. But you have to
supply chain stuff.
Yeah, you have to hold the open. It has to be an open container because Jesus can't get in through these plastic safety sealed caps.
Reminds me of the Iron Chariots.
Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
But and then you dress your heavenly Father and state your authority, and then you bless it. You only have to do it once, and remember, you're blessing the oil, not the container. So every time you put new oil in there, you got to re-bless it. But the old oil is good forever. Then you draw a cross on whatever you're going to bless. I wonder if you could bless lube, like for your car. You dirty-minded people.
Well, I understand that I have a friend who grew up in Poland, and I understand the Catholic Church is very active there, and they do things like bless new cars, and they bless your radio or whatever to make sure it's going to work for a while, and bless your house and your dog and all these things. So that's part of the business.
I think I'm going to anoint some of these. The consecrated wafers. I don't know. Is it like a double negative but. Okay. If I anoint some of these.
While you're chomping away, I'll continue on with our story about Laura. Poor Laura.
Yeah, poor Laura. I'll stop being funny for a minute because this is pretty serious.
Okay. Shall I keep going? Okay. Well, So some of these, this exorcism happened. She was held down. She was trying to get away. She couldn't get away. There was a bunch of people, kind of a mob scene. I think of it like a kind of a spiritual rape. They just decided to descend on her, do their thing to her, and she was an unwilling participant. So
at some point.
At some point.
At some point, she may have been a willing participant.
Yeah, so there's some debate about whether
seeking and things like that.
Whether but we'll get to that in a little bit. Okay, so as far as her injury, I'm reading from the court ruling again. Over the next months, several psychologists and psychiatrists examined Laura, documenting her multiple symptoms such as angry outbursts, weight loss, sleeplessness, nightmares, hallucinations, self-mutilation, fear of abandonment, and agoraphobia. Despite the psychiatric counseling, Laura had become increasingly depressed and suicidal, even dropping out of her senior year of high school and abandoning her former plan to attend Bible college and pursue missionary work. Finally, in November 1996, Laura was diagnosed and suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, which the doctors associated with her physical restraint of the church, June 1996. One of the expert witnesses at the trial testified that Laura would, quote, require extensive time to recover her trust in authorities, spiritual leaders, and her lifelong religious faith, unquote. Ultimately, Laura was classified as disabled by the Social Security Administration and began drawing a monthly disability check. So, whatever issues she might have had, she definitely was disabled, I think, or at least the state agreed that she was disabled. She began getting disability checks and so on. So let's talk about the history of the suit. She ended up suing. She and her family ended up suing the church for libel, for abuse and false imprisonment, and the court at that time in 1996 awarded the family $300,000, and the church was claiming some sort of religious liberty claims at this time. And they ended up appealing, and the church ended up appealing. And in 2002, the church appealed and got the penalty to them reduced by $122,000. So the total would be $178,000. And the reduction was that they didn't believe that she would have lost future income. So there was a question of whether this disability would cause a loss of future income or not. That was the sort of the decision in the second suit, and that was the Second Circuit Court of Appeals in Texas. The third suit was argued April 2007 to the Supreme Court, and it sought to the Supreme Court actually ended up, and this is kind of complicated, they ended up separating emotional claims and physical claims. And they decided that emotional claims were of religious nature, and the physical claims, like her bruises and such, because she didn't sue on behalf of those, they were not part of the thing. So the state has decided that, well, if you wanted to sue again on the physical claims that you had, and not the emotional claims, you could go ahead and do that, and there'd be no problem. But because she sued on emotional claims, and because, as we'll find out, the emotional claims end up being tangled with religion, the state ended up ruling that the two cannot be separated. And so the religious claims, so it ended up being kind of a religious lawsuit, and the state ruled, we can't get involved in religion. And bowed out, and actually what they did is they threw out the whole thing, so she gets no reward whatsoever. So, so that's... It's a little complicated, and I don't completely understand it. But so effectively, her damages, her award for damages for emotional injury was barred by the First Amendment, effectively, in this suit. So they ruled that the emotional harm is intangible, therefore not substantive, which I don't agree with. I mean, we have vets coming back from the war with PTSD, and their harm is not intangible and unsubstantive, right? Their harm is real. Let's see, her suit was thrown out as the justices felt it would require an inquiry into the truths or falsity of religious claims which are forbidden by the Constitution.
No.
No. Okay, go ahead. This is a good time to chat a little bit.
They're wrong.
They're wrong. Well, we have the Salem witch trials, right? Where we had back in the 1662, we had people tried as witches, and they brought in so-called spectral evidence that oh, this person's a witch because I saw a demon or whatever, and all of that has been thrown out.
She turned me into a newt.
Right. She turned me into a newt. Right. She made. Yeah. There's anyway. So
what they're saying is we can't get into this truth issue on religious grounds because that's a violation of the First Amendment, which is a crock. You're a court of law. People have to demonstrate and prove their claims and provide evidence. You don't have to accept spectral evidence, and you shouldn't, but you could accept real evidence. And anybody who could actually demonstrate that there are such things as demons who can actually possess people would have a way of getting out of this kind of claim. But if they can't demonstrate that it's real, then they can't establish that what their claim that their claim is actually true, and they should be pilloried for the type of action that they're taking against people. What's to prevent someone from saying, "It is my sincere religious belief that you are possessed by leprechauns from the planet Xenu"? Ooh, Xenu, Scientologist. Oops. Xenu's not a planet; he's an intergalactic overlord who brought people to. Never mind. You have to pay to learn that crazy stuff. But this doesn't prevent anybody from just exercising what they say is their sincere belief and getting away with emotional trauma. Now, I'm not a psychiatrist, and I'm not a huge fan of people who want to bring lawsuits based on emotional trauma because it's difficult to prove, religion aside. How much have you been traumatized? How can we, stick a number on this? And, does it matter? But the fact of the matter is that in the name of religion and in the name of superstition and in the name of all kinds of other things that simply aren't based on anything real, people are being traumatized and abused. We've got the various sexual abuses that are done where it's an exploitation of the power and authority that they're given, which is completely independent of the religion. The problem with the religion, especially with the Catholics who I'll eat another cracker for, is that they go and they hide these priests and they circumvent the law so that people can't get what's coming to them. But to say that we can't even look at this because it would involve us trying to analyze whether or not religious claims are true is to me an admission that everybody already knows that the religious claims aren't true. They can't possibly be proven. They couldn't possibly survive the standards of a court of law, and that's the only thing that matters because we, believe it or not, hey, Christians, I'll wake up real quick. We don't live in a Christian nation. We don't live in a Judeo-Christian nation. We don't live in a Catholic nation, a Protestant nation. We live in a secular nation with a secular constitution that guarantees the rights and freedoms of everybody. Everybody. Me, you, I have, just like you Christians are free not to believe the Muslim claim and the Jewish claim, so am I. And the Jews are free not to believe the Christian claim and the Muslim claim, and so am I. So I'm free to disregard all of you. That's the way it works. And if you can't demonstrate that something's true, it's got no place in a court of law. The mere fact that you're unable to demonstrate this doesn't mean that the court shouldn't address the issue. If you've abused somebody and they come in and say, hey, these guys hurt me and traumatized me, and, granted, you may have to bear some responsibility for being sucked in, but we don't want to portray everybody as gullible victims because the vast majority of people believe some of this stuff on some level. It's like not everybody's going nuts over these crackers, but there are people who think that once a priest blessed this, it turns into the actual body of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And they cried kidnapping. Are you telling me that your God is so feeble? First of all, he's not omniscient, so he didn't see this shit coming. But he's so feeble that he's willing to put himself in the cracker and be kidnapped? What kind of God is that? That's not all powerful.
Oh, it's just the more you think about it, the sillier it's cheesy.
And so is this.
Yuck, yuck, yuck.
They're not barred by the First Amendment from investigating any truth claim. They just know that nobody could possibly establish religious claims.
Well, their ruling is more of the lines of, because these people believe it as religion, it's therefore protected, so, which is a really awful line of thought in my mind.
Yeah.
because there really was harm done to her. So to be fair to the Supreme Court, the Texas State Supreme Court, they did say, we do not mean to imply that under the cloak of religion, persons may with impunity commit intentional torts upon the religious adherents. Okay, so they do say that, but in reality, the practical matter is if your claim is somehow intermingled with religion, then the state is going to keep a hands off to it.
Yeah, well, that's BS too. That would be like me saying that religions are just superstitions, and by saying that, I in no way mean that they aren't true. That's what the court just did. Yeah, we're not saying that we're going to offer to provide protection against harm based on sincere religious beliefs, but that's what we just did.
So I have a number of thoughts on this that I kind of want to talk about, and then we can switch to callers. First off, at some level, the child and the family hurt themselves, and that is they themselves couldn't distinguish demon harm from real harm. So they went in and believed all this demon stuff, but went in and was kind of making a half-assed case against the church, and they really couldn't quite get their story straight. And in fact, they ended up...
You know why?
Why?
Because they believe this stuff.
They believe it. They believe it at some level, right? So in a sense, their own beliefs... Oh, you get some bad parts? A bone, oh. Yeah, you have to spit that out. So even the doctors that examined her couldn't separate the injuries from that were due to secular causes and religious causes. They tried to do that, and so the whole thing became very muddled. And so, to be fair to the Supreme Court, they had a difficult case where they had a very, very confusing sort of claim being made. But okay, so the child and the family may have hurt themselves in the sense by buying into this, but how did they buy into it? Well, the earlier brainwashing by the church and their religion caused them to lose touch with reality. It caused them to believe this stuff. So in a sense, by brainwashing this kid and this family enough, they ended up sort of winning, because they ended up sort of so detached from reality they couldn't make any substantive claim against the church. So by brainwashing, the brainwashing helped the church use her as a prop in rituals, extract tithes, and eventually evade their responsibility to her. So the church did nothing to help her.
Right.
In the whole episode did nothing to help her, but they helped her themselves at her expense by both getting tithe and evading any sort of criminal thing. And they also got helped in a weird way because they evaded a criminal suit. You know, this whole thing was a result of what's the word? There's the criminal suit, and then there's the suit where
civil suit?
Civil suit, right? So this whole thing was about a civil suit, but they never filed criminal claims against the church because they were church members, and that would be a bad thing to do. So they were sort of browbeaten, I think, into not, you know, this is false imprisonment of a child, okay, folks. So this is really a criminal case as far as I'm concerned, and this other thing is kind of because that never went through. This is kind of trying to address those harms. So the true meaning of religious liberty here is basically the churches get to do whatever they want as long as they brainwash people enough. So the church, in fact, if you read between the lines in this ruling, the courts never separated religious belief from emotional manipulation. Those two are synonymous in this ruling. So in their opinion, since religious belief is protected, emotional manipulation, emotional abuse of people is also protected. So
religion is emotional abuse and emotional manipulation. So
yeah. So that's how I read it.
Separate the two.
You know, when you read that, that's what I get out of it. So a couple more things here. I want to talk about adherence and consent. So this ruling was sort of about adherence, and there's a quote, but religious practices that might offend the religious rights or sensibilities of a non-believer outside the church are entitled to greater latitude when applied to an adherent within the church. So really? They're sort of saying that, you know, if you're doing shocking things outside the church, that's one thing, but if you're doing it within the church, With adherents, it's a completely different thing. That's what the ruling says.
So it would be wrong to forcibly have sex with somebody who's walking down the street, but it's okay to force your wife to have sex. It's not rape? Really? Are you sure?
Right.
What makes the position of being an adherent a loophole?
Right. And how do you determine who's an adherent? Is it somebody with a cross around their neck? Is it somebody who has to be a member of the church? Is it somebody who came into the church to listen to a service? Or is it somebody walking outside? Is it somebody who got killed during one of these rituals and they decided to say he was an adherent just to cover their asses?
I thought we'd pretty
on?
much come to this whole consensus that across the board, no means no. And even if she had willingly been a participant of exorcisms before, and even started as a willing participant to exorcism, to that particular one, the second she says, no, get your hands off me, I don't know, get your hands off her.
Right. This is the consent
What's so
thing,
hard about that?
Right. She did not give consent, or at least she didn't at the end.
Well, you know, people who are possessed by Satan are certainly not going to give consent. Satan doesn't want to give out. He's controlling them.
There's a catch-22.
Yeah, prove that in a court of law.
So I think that there is a comparison to be made here with rape. You know, although she wasn't physically raped, I think that emotionally she was.
The stress and trauma that people have gone through in sexual rapes and other abuses. We're not equating anything, but there's a similarity. And some of the emotional abuse that goes on, you know, both with regard to exorcisms and with regard to just some of the things that happen just generally within religions, is, I think, incredibly traumatizing. I think teaching 4- and 5-year-olds that they're going to burn in hell forever if they don't do X, Y, and Z, or if they don't, you know, believe X, Y, Z, I think that is torture. I think that is the mental equivalent of rape. It's emotional abuse. You know, we've grown as a society where once upon a time, if you know, somebody was beating their kids and you thought it was excessive, you kept your mouth shut because that's their kids and that's their business, and you don't get involved. And then we finally started waking up to the idea that not everybody's a fit parent, not everybody's sane, and not everybody knows, you know, how much is too much, if any is perhaps too much. But so we establish rules about child abuse, and we start off with just physical abuse. Nobody wants to pay attention. You can, you know, yell at your kid and belittle your kid, and that's not really abuse. And then finally we start waking up to the idea that, yeah, it is. Telling your kid that they're worthless and unloved and useless and destined for hell and that they're crap.
Wretches.
They you know, all kinds of horrible things, does cause long-term damage to the individual. It's emotional abuse, and now we recognize that. And so now we do what we can to prevent that. Now, it's not easy. These aren't questions where to draw the line.
They're not black and white issues, right?
Where do the rights of the parents end and the responsibilities of the state begin? Those are questions that are never easy. But we're getting better and better about it, and we're trying whatever we can to be both reasonable and respectful of the rights of parents while protecting children. And yet the one area where this has traditionally been loopholed or grandfathered through is religion. And what the Texas State Supreme Court did was extend and continue that loophole, that protection, under the guise of not wanting to trample on people's First Amendment rights. So, you know, I guess if the next time Child Protective Services comes over to your house because you're the type of asshat who physically and emotionally abuses your children and somebody's reported you, just tell them that it's your sincere religious belief that you need to make your child as miserable as possible. Maybe we can get another court case that'll reverse this moronic stuff that we've got now. But
yeah. So, you know, you've hit on this whole consent thing, and I think one thing that really needs to be driven home here is that Laura was a minor, right? She could not really give consent, in my opinion, to this thing, right? She was a child, and her parents were not present throughout this. They were apparently using...
And I'd say that minor or not, she's the only one who could have.
Yeah.
If you're a parent, you should never be allowed to give consent for your child to be traumatized.
Yeah,
sorry,
absolutely.
She's the only one who could.
So just a quick break. We're going to take calls here in about 3 minutes or so. You guys want to maybe put up the number behind the scenes there?
It's up.
It's up? Oh, it's always up, isn't it?
Yep.
Okay.
We're
organized. Okay. So the state completely ignored the fact that she was a minor in this whole thing, and so it effectively, by not saying anything, it effectively said, the state effectively said that it's okay to emotionally abuse minors in this case. So and I find that very disturbing. I find that probably the most disturbing part of this is that basically if you want to apply your religious stuff to minors, you don't have any reason to stop that. So let's think about some of the recent things that have happened and how that might have changed things. In the fundamentalist fundamentalist Church of the Latter-day Saints case, the Mormon cult, they brought up children to be child brides in their religion. So and apparently these kids are more or less willing to be brides. And so, this is very much protected by this new ruling, as far as I'm concerned. The Catholic Church and the pedophiles, if you claim that you're not doing harm to the kid, or you invent some sort of religious reason for this, like you're infusing them with the power of the Holy Spirit, then maybe that's okay.
The only way we can get Jesus out of, or the Satan out of him, is to put some more of us into him.
Right. It's not hard to imagine, somebody inventing a religious reason to go abuse a kid. Or how about reparative therapy for gay kids? Schilling brought that up. I think that's a very good point. I mean, these kids are not going to be willing to go and be deprogrammed for something. And in all cases, these things cause harm to children. So I'd like to see children removed from these potentially emotionally abusive situations because they cannot consent and they need protection. So I would like to see laws where children cannot be brought into religions until their age of consent, but that's never going to happen. No. That's what I'd like to see. So just to wrap up here, in Texas, the notion of religious freedom means that churches can get away with all manner of emotional abuse, if their victims are parishioners, whether they're children or not. So I personally think you might be better off thinking for yourself and staying out of these churches.
I couldn't possibly agree more.